Brennan, should I roll for this?
You know what, Oren? I'll let I will let you roll. 16 or higher, I will give a hint. 20, I'll give you a juicy hint.
Okay, okay. Let me get my dice out.
Ooh, I love it. Here we go. Let's see what
Okay.
happens.
Hello everyone and welcome to Geek Peek. In today's episode, I talk with Brennan Lee Mulligan about the Unsleeping City Chapter II. This is the 8th season of Dimension 20, and in this episode we dive into production, characters, world building, and a lot of fan questions. Before we head into it, please click the subscribe button so you won't miss any future Geek Peek episodes. And without further ado, enjoy the interview.
So, Brennan, it's the Unsleeping City Chapter II.
Hell yeah. We're doing it, baby. Sequel. Dropping the
Sequel.
remix. Yes.
So, tell us a bit about what we're going to see in this season. As like, what's uh, what's the big idea around this one?
What is the big idea in this one? Um, I think that we are switching it up this time a little bit. First of all, it's a brand new adventure. Two new player characters from Murph and Siobhan. We have Iga Lazowski, who is a sort of Eastern European or a Polish fortune teller who works with a bunch of sort of like Polish and Russian crime families in New York and has a secret money laundering operation that runs out of her Upper West Side psychic business. We have Cody, the Night Angel Walsh, Cody Night Angel Walsh, who is a mall goth without a mall, who used to be a former Hot Topic manager at the Queen Center Mall and is no longer. I can say as a little teaser, Cody begins episode one not yet able to see the unsleeping city. So we start with Cody before Cody is even within the confines of the unsleeping city. This season, we are facing threats that I would say are more powerful and more frightening than the previous season. Also because they are much larger and more all encompassing. So this season I think almost dips into like cosmic horror a little bit more than the last season, but also is so, I say cosmic horror and then immediately remember that we have two fights this season, one of which is on a series of balloons at the Macy's Day Parade, and another one which happens on a hot dog cart. So it's a lot of goofs, but then also some very cool stuff. And I think the stars of this season are our 6 cast members. Seeing the character arcs for these characters, which is really wonderful because I think our players this season pulled off the impossible, which is having characters that keep all of their successes and all of their hard-won lessons from the first season, and yet still take you deep into the hearts of the characters to see ways that these characters still need to grow and change and pursue their dreams. It's a beautiful season.
Awesome. How much time passed between season one and this one?
3 years. So it's been 3 years since the events
Whoa.
of season one.
Wow, 3 years is a lot.
Long time, right? Long time. Yeah. Well, I didn't want to do the thing in the Unsleeping City of like it's the next month and there's another huge it's sort of like, yeah, like the Unsleeping City is wild and magical and there's always problems to solve, but you have a couple years in between the big life or death struggles. So, and it's also fun because you get to see kind of what the 3 years of downtime has had as an effect on the returning characters, which is really, really fun.
Great. So, would you say like that the returning characters had? It seemed from the trailer that they kind of like drifted apart, and then like came back together when the season starts. So would you say that this downtime has been like a kind of separation time for them?
I think what it is this season, one of the big themes of this season is isolation and loneliness, which as a New Yorker, I can tell you is a very omnipresent threat in that city, especially for people like I was lucky to have family there. But the city's pace, the hustle of it, the expensiveness of it, the way that you're trying to survive can be very isolating and alienating. And then a lot of people move to the city to chase their dreams. And when you're chasing your dream there, especially if you've moved away from your community, you can find yourself feeling very, very isolated from people. So one of the things is, yes, there is a drifting apart, but I think the thing that's so menacing about it and sort of the thing that it gets right about life in a big city is that it's not even intentional. Right? It's not like anyone had a falling out necessarily. It's just that life picks up speed. People get busy. They're adults. Like one of the things about these heroes of New York is it's not like the Fellowship of the Ring where they're out in the wilderness all camping with each other every night. Kingston and Liz get back together at the end of season 1. Ricky and Esther are in love, and there's and they all have jobs. That's the other thing. These are unlike other heroes in fantasy who seem to be able to just live and survive with no money. Kingston's got to go to the hospital. Pete's not, Pete stops being a drug dealer in the epilogue of season 1 and has to find a way to make money. And drug dealing, for all the negative things can be said about it, does give you cash. So he has to find a new way to make this happen. So a lot of the commentary of this season is not that they drifted apart because they didn't love each other. It's because the nature of life and survival and capitalism and the grind and hustle and modernity and kind of how we are segmented and create community, a lot of that just serves to have that scene you saw in the trailer where they're so happy to see each other after a long time.
That's amazing. I did want to ask, what influenced the decision to go for chapter 2 as opposed to like a new entire new world?
In other words, instead of doing a new season to go back to the Unsleeping City?
Yeah, exactly.
We love it. We missed it. We wanted to go back. I also had a kind of like, I think we just missed these characters in a way. Like I had multiple people, like Emily was like, hey, anytime I get to play Sophia again, anytime we end up doing a one shot, we almost always do Fantasy High because it's just an easier setting for one shots. But every time that we're going to reprise the bad kids, there's always a little thing of like, hey, if we ever wanted to do an Unsleeping City one shot, I think we just love that world. And because this was going to be our first remotely recorded season due to COVID, I think it was like, hey, if we're going to be doing all this stuff like moving from battle maps to digital maps and all this other stuff, let's do something tried and true so that if we're changing all of this, at least we have something familiar.
Great. Piggybacking off of digital maps, I guess you used Roll20 for this season. So how was that like instead of using regular maps?
It was a big switch. I had gotten some practice doing Roll20 before. They are beautiful. First of all, for all fans of the show, for the diehard fans, the maestro himself, Rick Perry, was our art director on this season. So even though we moved from the concrete to the digital, and there are a bunch of our awesome, Nate Villarreal and Sabrina Wichner and Maxie and Shane and all the awesome crew of painters we have were not able to come on to this season. Rick was still art directing, so it still has that Dimension 20 touch of the fanciful, the absurd. We had Kendra Wells, our awesome illustrator, there back on for this season. Everyone's seen the new PC art that they did, which is just phenomenal. It's so cool. And we had Eightfold Paper doing our battle maps for us in their style, which is really beautiful. it was just amazing, and it's very fun. There were a lot of things we did with these sort of maps that we couldn't have done in the past, that have to do with features of Roll20, like dynamic lighting and fog of war and rolling. Basically we were able to kind of remake the Box of Doom because there's a 3D dice feature on the tabletop for Roll20. So even though we don't have the Box of Doom physically, we still are able to roll in front of the screen and get those big reactions. There's a couple nat 20s this time around that truly blow the stack off of the Zoom room, so to speak. So it was very fun, brand new and familiar all at the same time.
So technically, roll in front of the board is the new Box of Doom roll?
Yes, exactly. Roll in front of the screen, or roll on the tabletop, roll on Roll20, whatever you want to say. But we were really delighted. And we also had the awesome Carlos Luna with us, who was one of the stars of Pirates of Leviathan. Carlos, who is one of the most multi-talented people I've ever met in my whole life, is the maestro for Roll20, helping us control the grid, add effects, helping us move minis around in these complex sets. So Carlos was like our Roll20 croupier, or like keeping the thing moving, and was phenomenal.
In our previous interview, you mentioned that Carlos was involved in a season of Dimension 20 outside Pirates of Leviathan. Was that the only season, or is there another one he was involved with that we don't know about?
Carlos so far was working behind the scenes on Unsleeping City, very much in the scenes in Pirates of Leviathan. And there is an as yet undisclosed third Dimension 20 project, which you will find out that Mr. Luna and I also worked on it together.
Brennan, should I roll for this?
You know what, Oren? I will let you roll. 16 or higher, I will give a hint. 20, I'll give you a juicy hint.
Okay. Let me get my dice out.
Cool. Ooh, I love it. Here we go. Let's see what happens.
So, like last time.
Yes.
17.
17. Very well. Okay, here's my only thing I will say. I can't reveal any world stuff, but I will say that multiple people that have been requested by diehard fans over and over since the first season of Fantasy High to appear in a side quest will be appearing in the next undisclosed side quest.
Okay.
You're getting a bunch. I'm feeling loose. I'm feeling generous.
We will digest it and analyze it and come back with conclusions. Okay. People want to know what happened to Rowan.
Rowan Berry. Rowan, Siobhan and I had a long conversation about what she wanted to do with Rowan. And it was one of these things where she was I think there were two things going on with me and Siobhan this season. Number one, she was like, in the world, I don't think Rowan would be participating in the day-to-day city anymore. Rowan would take her job as basically not the queen, but like the president of this new fairy court in New York very seriously. So within the world building of the world, fairy, which prior to Rowan creating and establishing this new fairy realm in season 1, spoilers for season 1, fairies kind of lived in little enclaves and pockets kind of scattered throughout New York, usually having to live in the Unsleeping City, meaning they were neither in dream nor were they in the waking world. They were in this weird sort of liminal in-between space, right? Rowan performing this incredible act of magic and defeating Titania allowed her to establish a full fairy court. So now there is almost like another pocket dimension within New York City, much smaller than Nod, smaller than the sixth borough, but still very present. And so Rowan is almost in this extra dimensional space, holding court, being the leader of the fair folk in New York and helping to restore them. So she's kind of left the day-to-day. Siobhan was basically like, that's how I That's what I think she really would do. We can find a reason for her to not do that if you need her to be in the season, but my gut feeling is that's what she'd really be doing. And the second thing was a sort of out of character thing where we knew that, again, huge spoilers, because of Cugrash's incredible sacrifice and the awesome way that Murph played him, we knew that Murph needed to be playing a new character. And I think part of Siobhan wanted to go like keep him company and not have him be the only person with a new character. She was like, no, let's let's go keep Murph some company and have a new PC, so he's not the only odd one out, right? Which is, I think, very, very lovely. So those are the two big things that explain Rowan's absence. However, I'm going to be sneaky and mysterious here. Just because the new PC in episode 1 is Eagle Lazowski, and just because, I'm not going to say definitively that the wonderful Ms. Berry makes 0 appearances in the season. So we'll have to leave that as a question mark for future episodes.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, playing multiple characters by the same cast?
We've seen it before. Zach Oyama played Cumulus and Lapan in the same episode of A Crown of Candy. So
Yes.
it's, all things are possible. We'll have to just wait and see.
It's like that old adage that in fantasy worlds, people never die, never really die.
How many times are Spider-Man and Superman and Batman all going to die before we realize, it's not really the biggest deal in the world? No, I totally hear you.
Okay, so I heard that there's an organization called Gladiator.
Yes.
What can you tell us about them?
Gladiator is a company within the world of the Unsleeping City that is an enormous, monolithic media company that has shipping warehouses and a huge shopping department, but also creates content and media. And there was a piece of news that was current when I was thinking about this season that was basically about a similar company to Gladiator in our real world that was trying to make an enormous sort of dystopian campus within New York City, and an extremely awesome, and a bunch of community activists and organizers and labor unions and some a couple awesome politicians and their supporters as well, basically shut that down, much to the good. So in this world, in the previous season, we had villains that were extremely singular, right? They were like unique individuals. But one of the things that I wanted to try to do this season was create a threat. And obviously there are plenty of like individual bad guys as well. But one of the things we wanted to do this season was that I think is very within the spirit of New York's struggles in the real world, are to create forces and villains that are in themselves disembodied, shall we say, systemic or systematic, having these kind of malevolent forces at work that are not just individual people that you can bonk on the head and have them go away, but something a little bit more sinister, shall we say.
So it's like not giving the villain a face, but giving the villain like a label, which is, yeah.
Exactly. And also there are plenty of, obviously, like you will learn of the evils of Gladiator. There's a specific player character that has a specific vendetta against Gladiator in episode 1, which is why it's not a spoiler. But Gladiator is definitely right up there at the very beginning of the story, but there's also complexities that get added as the season goes along. So it might get a little bit more complicated than that as the season unwinds.
Okay, that's interesting. Someone asked a very beautiful question that I really liked. Season one was filled with many references to real world New York City. What can we expect in season two in terms of references to real places, people, events, or history?
Um, there are some very funny late season references to real history, some locations. There are some historical locations referenced that even I think like people that are not from the United States would recognize as like, oh, I know that as a New York landmark. There are some deep cut New York references. One of the things with the Unsleeping City is that a big point of inspiration for the Unsleeping City is the book Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. One of the things I loved about Neverwhere when I first read it was the degree of inside baseball, of like inside references that only a Londoner would get. And I really loved, as an outsider reading that book, being like, oh, Neil Gaiman is not slowing down for me at all. Like, these are references to London that, yeah, I don't get them, but that makes it more authentic. So one of the things we did when we did Made on Sleeping City was like, hey, we're going to make New York references. We're going to talk about train lines. We're going to talk about neighborhoods. And not to exclude people, but rather to say, like, you're getting the genuine article, you're getting the real deal, right? And I think that so for fans of history, there's also some things in this that are New York shout outs that are not just sort of global historical, but are also kind of deeply personal. To get personal for a moment, my dad is a tried and true New Yorker. Lived in Hell's Kitchen. I would go with my dad. He was a stand-up comedian. He would take me all around the city, and he's the biggest New York history buff in the world. And he would take me all around town, um, and just impressed on me the importance of the city's history. And I used to all the time talk as a little kid and be like, I think one time he took me down to the Five Points, which is a historic Irish neighborhood in New York. It's the site of Gangs of New York, the Martin Scorsese movie. And he was like, this is the Five Points, and this is where it used to be here, and this is that. And he's gesturing, and I was like 8, and the thing he was gesturing to was like a Dunkin' Donuts. And I was like, huh, Dad. And I was like, Dad, we sure spend a lot of time looking at stuff that's not here anymore, being kind of an ungrateful little kid. And as I got older, I was so grateful for all the times my dad would take me to see something that wasn't there anymore. So this is the first season was very much my love letter to New York, and there's a big part of the season that's a love letter to my dad specifically and the lessons that he imparted to me about New York's history.
That's amazing. I mean, that personal touch is just makes it all the more sweeter.
Mhm.
It's amazing. Um, okay, so someone asked if there were any unexpected upsides of recording this season in pandemic conditions.
Oh, the commute is great. No, it's a really dumb joke. My apologies. No, obviously, both for just the reasons of like nothing about even the things about this pandemic that have altered life in certain ways. Some people can work from home now, and before they weren't able to. Nothing about the pandemic is obviously like easy. There's not really for something this horrendous. You don't really want to talk about like silver linings. I would much prefer that we had been able to go play in the dome in person. That being said, um, I think that there are not really upsides per se, but what I will say is I am grateful for the hard work of our amazing producers, Ebony Harden, David Kearns, Carlos Luna, our technicians like Matt LaForest and Ryan Green, are just all these people that are these wizards that were able to make this doable. So I think what I have gratitude for is all the hard work of the people I know and of all those engineers and people I don't, that enabled us to tell a really like heartfelt story with a lot of fun in it, and be able to tell that in defiance of a logistical nightmare. So I marvel at the wonders of the modern world, and I'm just so grateful I got to play a cool game with my friends.
Tell us about when the season releases. Where can we find it? And
Awesome.
you know,
This season will be releasing every Wednesday starting on November 11th, which is in a few days from now, and it'll be airing once a week through I think March on Dropout.tv. So go sign up for your Dropout account. We also have a Dropout app that's on a bunch of stuff, so that if you have like Roku or whatever, you can go get the Dropout app there. Wherever fine apps are sold, go find the Dropout app, and it'll be releasing on Wednesdays there.
Awesome. Brennan, thank you so much for having this interview with me. I love you, and we will talk soon again.
Big heart, my man. Great to see you as always. Be well.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of Geek Peek. If you liked it, please give this video a like, as it helps it spread and reach to more people. And if you want to listen to the next one, it's right here. See you there.